So in this video, I'm going to have a look at how we remove the main hydraulic jacks from the convertible on the E46. Just a bit of an explanation of the way these things fit together when they're inside the car. You're going to be sitting there like that. There's a pin that runs through the top and the bottom, which holds it in place. And depending on which side, the setup is a little bit different. I'll show you how to remove those pins in a moment. And the hydraulic connections on the front here, there's just a clip that actually holds the port connection, which would look like that. That would hold that in place, and then that's just going to click like that. And then to remove that, that just pops straight off, and you can wiggle that one out. At the back here, that one's going to be like that, and then you've just got a little clip and a 2.5mm Allen key screw that just holds it in place, and obviously that can be removed and that just wiggles straight out. The reason I'm removing these is because these port seals were all leaking. These just have a little O-ring inside, a square section O-ring that comes from the factory originally. They're pretty hard to find these days, so I'm replacing those with X-rings, which actually are going to work a little bit better. They're the same X-ring that is in all the valve blocks, etc. in the system. It's a size 006, nitrile 70 X-ring, and they're pretty simple to replace. So have a look at the other video that I have of me replacing those X-rings or those O-rings in the valve block. It's exactly the same procedure. I'll put a link in the description. And it's only really if these seals around here are leaking, or internally the seals are leaking and the thing just isn't moving because it's not providing the required pressure, that's where you'll need to send it away. But replacing these is very simple, and it's a really cheap fix. The problem with removing these though is that they're way down in the mechanism, and in the past people have removed the entire roof to actually get access to these, and that is actually a really hard process. Not to actually disconnect everything, but to actually lift it out. The thing is properly heavy, and you're going to need at least 2, if not 3, pretty strong blokes to actually get it out of the car, and you're risking damage, etc. Whereas what I do is I actually just prop up one side at a time. What I do is actually just prop it up using a piece of timber. Again, I made another video of how to actually remove the roof and how to disconnect everything. I'll put a link in the description for that. But this is the actual piece of timber that I use to prop it up. And what it is, basically, in the actual roof mechanism, if you've got the mechanism there, underneath it is a base plate that is set in the factory. And the bottom base plate doesn't move, and then it's actually got screws that come out of the top of it, and that's actually what you bolt the roof into, and it's always going to go down into the same position each time. There are 8mm pins which get nuts put on them, which actually screws the roof to that base plate. And so what I've done is, well, for one of those pins you get a hole in the bottom which is 8mm. This is just an 8mm bolt that's been threaded into the top, which I've chopped the head off. And then what I'm going to do is lift it up and put it on that pin at the bottom on the base plate, and then put the roof mechanism over that so that can't actually move. And the reason why you want to have something sturdy like that, if you just put it on a piece of timber without that stuff that's holding it in its place, it's actually very, very likely to slip off. And with hydraulic oil and whatever, the thing is really heavy, and there's a really good chance you'll hurt yourself. That piece of timber, I've cut that to 23 centimeters, and I find that's kind of ideal to have it high enough out of the roof area, so you can actually get access to everything, but not so high that it actually starts to sort of be difficult to move it out. So all I'm going to do is prop up one side at a time to actually lift it up like that, remove the strut, then I'm just going to lower it down again, and then lift the other side to actually get access to the jacks here to be able to remove them. To clarify which of the screws you're going to remove and which you're not, the ones that you're going to remove, there's one there, there's one there, and there's one that's actually underneath the piece of timber that I'm using to prop everything up. In addition to this one at the front here. What's obvious about the ones that you don't want to loosen, you can see that one down there next to that post, and there are 3. There's one at the back here which you can't really see, and there's one down in here, but they all have this round surround, and that's actually part of the base plate. So the ones that have that round surround, do not remove those, because that's the thing that's set in the factory to give the roof the correct alignment of the base plate. So this is the gas strut and the hydraulic jack after it's been removed. I've got a strap around the gas strut to keep it compressed to the right length, and the way this fits together, there are two holes here, which is where these pins that run between both through at the end of the gas strut and through the hydraulic jack. It's the thing that holds it into place. And the gas strut itself, sorry, the hydraulic jack sits up in there like that, with the two hydraulic connections. There's one there and one there. Remove those two hydraulic connections, and then what we're going to do is remove these two pins. The problem with the gas strut is this has a mountain of pressure on it. There's just an E-clip at each end, which is easily removed either down here or at the side here. That's going to be sitting in there like that, and I've actually compressed that again so it's at the right length. But to get this out, the problem is that even with that, when I put that on, I put it as tightly as I possibly could. The moment you start to tap this out, and all you need to do is just tap these with a screwdriver from the other side, and it'll start to move, is that this still wants to stretch out and expand a little bit. Which actually made it relatively easy to actually get it out, because if I tapped at the bottom, as it turns out, when you do that, and you actually, because it actually now wants to expand, it actually allows that angle to point in here, so this one could actually pop out quite easily, and then the other one could pull out. But the problem is then you have this thing where it's actually too long to actually get it back in again, and I'll show you in a moment how to get that back. So this is how I'm going to recompress the gas strut, just a pipe clamp, but obviously you could use a vise or anything as long as it's big enough to be able to fit that in there. And all I'm going to do is just compress it slightly and then just pull in on the tie down strap, and then adjust it just so it's the correct length to go back in there, and I'll have it so it'll just slot straight in there, and then I'll put the gas strut in with it once I've got this to the correct length. I'm going to try that in the car. It's actually a little bit too short, so I shall release that a little bit. I'll need to compress that again. Try that again. And now, once it's at the right length, you should be able to just slot that in and be able to see at each side that it just slots straight into the hole. So now that's the right length, so I can install the hydraulic jack. So now to put that jack back in again is a relatively simple process. I can just put that one up there like that, put that top one in just slightly so it's actually holding it in place. Make sure you grease the pins before you put these back in. And once that one's in, then we can go down and go to the other one. And then they just slot back in like that. And then you can just push those home on the other side and put those E-clips in, and then you can connect the hydraulic connectors. Of note, at the bottom here, and I'll just pull that out and show you. On the bottom here, there's actually some serrations there that grip the hole down the bottom here. So whilst this one doesn't, and it'll actually slide all the way through quite happily, this one, you will actually have to give it a bit of a tap with a mallet to actually get it all the way through. It'll actually get into the hole on the other side, but it won't actually push through far enough. And that's one of the reasons also why, to get this thing moving at the start, when you're removing it, you actually need to give it a decent tap to actually get it clear of those serrations that are gripping that hole. To remove the hydraulic jack on the left-hand side, first thing you'll need to do is remove the valve block, which is relatively simple. First thing you want to do is remove those two hoses that go to the pump at the top there. You'll just disconnect the clip. There's just an Allen key, remove that because that's actually on quite tightly. Wiggle those out. And then you there are two screws that go in here, just remove that so that becomes loose. And now you can get your fingers in here, disconnect the electrical connectors, which are those there. They'll actually feed through that hole there and come around the back, but I've just removed those and put those over here to make it easier to get access to things underneath it. And then once that's clear, you can sort of move it to the side, and these hydraulic connections are 6 on the inside here. These clips just move sideways like that to disconnect them. They actually have a little plastic clip to hold it in place, as well as a second measure. You can just use a small screwdriver to remove those. And then they just wiggle free, and then that can come out. And then once that's out, then you've got the hydraulic jack in here, and it's actually going to be a lot simpler to remove than the other one. Like the other side, we're going to remove those two hydraulic connections, which are exactly the same. Move those out of the way so we've got some space to move. And then the same, we've got a pin at the bottom and a pin at the top. However, they don't have a gas strut connected to them, which makes it really, really simple. The one at the top, which is this one here, is connected to the main pillar sensor to tell you what angle it is. As you can see, the roof moves, it goes up and down. On each side, there's an E-clip, so there's one on this side in here, and there's also one on this side. So to remove the arm for the sensor, just to remove that E-clip, you've also got a washer there as well. And then once it comes off, that can easily just get wiggled free, and then that'll just dangle down the side, and that'll be sitting in there like that. And with that E-clip removed, you can just tap that out and just pull it out pretty easily from the other side. There's no pressure on these because there's no gas strut, so the arm will actually move in and out easily. There'll be a little bit of fluid inside, so have rags and everything underneath it, but they will move quite happily. At the bottom, there's just a pin like that that's got a stub on the outside, E-clip on the inside, so we're going to remove the E-clip. Again, it's got serrations there that grip that hole, so you just have to tap that out. And once that's removed, then again, you can easily just lift this up and pull that out. With these, when you remove them, they're going to be fully compressed. So this end here is pretty much going to be empty of fluid, but this end here is going to be full. So all of that's actually going to be full of fluid. So don't just start moving this jack back and forth, because it's going to spurt fluid out everywhere. I'd put this over a bucket and then just move it back and forth a whole bunch of times, pointing down to actually get most of the fluid out before you start to work on it. Something to be careful of, if you're going to remove these jacks and send them away, and you're going to have the car maybe bolt everything down and then put the roof on, be really careful about these hydraulic lines. Not so bad on this one, because you can actually sort of just zip tie them in the middle where that jack was, so it doesn't get damaged. But on the other side, there's obviously a lot more hydraulic connections with the valve block. If you're keeping the valve block in the car, then I would suggest connecting it to the valve block, because otherwise there are so many moving bits here. It would be very easy, as things start to move around, for these to get stuck in the wrong spot and get completely crushed by the mechanism. So just be careful of that. If you need to remove the sensor, there are two screws. I've just removed those already. And then with that plug still connected, you can actually just sort of wiggle that out, and that comes out. Obviously you can disconnect it then. You get that plastic thing that sits over the top of it, and then obviously it's a pretty simple process of putting that back in and screwing that back into place.